Just imagine that we have people who do this. Every time somebody buys something that they're shipping, what do you have? Your address, their name. We can automatically send them a thank you card that says, "Thank you for buying our product. We really appreciate it." Signed, Josh and Sam.
Welcome to Pipelineology, the business-to-business podcast for agencies, consultants, coaches, and businesses looking to build a pipeline of hot prospects ready to buy their products and services. Never wonder where your next client is coming from. To learn more about our strategies, services, and for resources on building your sales pipeline, visit pipelineology.com. Now, on to the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pipelineology. I am your host, Gary Ruplinger, and today I am pleased to be joined by Sam and Josh Ovett from Mobile Pocket Office. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank
Happy
you.
to be here.
Gary.
Well, I am excited to have you. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Before we jump into that, for people who aren't familiar with you or Mobile Pocket Office, could you just give a little bit about your story, your background, and how you guys got here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Take the first part.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So we're a firm, just so people understand it, that does consulting and implementation of automation and process, but that's the technical part. The exciting part is we're a father-son led firm. So it's a lot of working together to look at your business from two different angles. The old guy that you see here, Josh, and the young guy, myself. So we say it with a bit of jest and a bit of fun, but the idea is to look at your business and help you understand where you can be human, where it counts, and otherwise automate. Josh, if you want to jump in for a second, talk a little bit about the background of why we started this specifically, because it comes from different backgrounds.
Absolutely. So I spent most of my years, 30 plus years, doing automation for large companies, so that we're making things consistent, delivery consistent, and integration of different systems. So long story short is, now that we work with small to mid-sized businesses or agencies or consultants, one of the things that we find is they're busy. They're too busy. They're working in their business rather than on their business. So the idea is, where can we free up somebody? And I use the statement of two things. One is, the best business model is the one that doesn't need you, so it can run. And the other one, we start a conversation, we're like, okay, if we're going to go off into the Amazon and spend 6 weeks on vacation exploring it, the nearest phone service is 4 hours away, and we'll go for 6 weeks. Will your business still be as good or better when you return? Can you actually do it? And so when we look at things in that perspective, you have to take a very close look at what could you remove that you're doing on a regular basis. And I'm sure, Gary, that during our conversation, we'll go through some actual real live examples of clients and customers who we've done some cool things with that might interest your audience.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I'm definitely excited to kind of talk about, kind of explore some of these automations, some of the possibilities, because as you were mentioning, the being off in the Amazon for 6 weeks, I got like knots in my stomach when you were saying that, because I'm thinking, gosh, no, I couldn't spend 6 days away. I need my phone. I got to talk to people. I got to email. I got to be in communication and make sure everything's running smoothly. So that's a scary prospect. I know for me at least, and I know a lot of our listeners probably thinking the same thing of 6 weeks. Heck,
I didn't learn it. I didn't invent it. I learned it from a gentleman who for 30 years took 166 days a year off. No cell phone service, no interruptions, a room with a view somewhere in the world. So I know it's been done. I learned how to do it. I did it this year. I took 6 weeks off, and guess what? We're still profitable and it's still growing.
That is awesome. So I'm in. Where do we start? What do we do? Where do we begin this journey? What should we be focusing on?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll jump in there, Josh, and you can layer in some stories around how we look at it with folks. And I think an interesting little backstory, just to back up a second on, is how we started this thing and where it came from. Because, here Josh has been doing for years. I mean, I'm his son, so I've seen it for years and grew up around it. Process-based something related to process and technology put together, mostly for large businesses for the majority of my upbringing. I went to college, really enjoyed that, and decided I'm going to professionally whitewater kayak and guide. So here I am being a professional athlete. I had this background of all this business process stuff and an degree in environmental sciences. So I'm learning about ecosystems and how things go together. And this is years ago now at this point, but I think it's an interesting story because there's a lot of things that I took from my time as a professional athlete and that we've applied into this business, and that Josh took from his business process years and we've applied into the process side of marketing. So I like to talk about that because it's a unique background. It's not completely what people are used to hearing. And I think if you start to look at it that way, it's a lot of fun. Josh, it looks like you've got something to chime in there with. So,
Well, one of the things that you don't know about Sam, because we've all just kind of met, is he likes to do adventure sports, hiking, whitewater kayaking, anything that you potentially, if you're not paying attention, you could wind up in a hospital or like a couple of good scrapes. So there's a lot of risk management
exactly.
and risk in what he does and how he looks at things. I mean, I looked at risk management from a business perspective. He's looking at it from a personal, and I'll apply it backwards. But I'll let him talk about, one example would be is, if you're going to go run some, if you see some pictures at a later date of him running a, 400-foot cliff down
Or like
river,
80 feet.
80 feet. Okay. I was 400 feet away looking at it. So it was big, it was rough. And it looks like you go, when I would look at it before, when I took them to these rivers and said, look at those crazy people, they're trying to kill themselves, literally. And next thing I knew is I put my sons in that kind of training at, 8-10 years old and said, okay, let's go learn how to whitewater kayak. So anyway, I'll let Sam talk about his perspective of looking at something from a risk, all right, and averting, like you just said, Gary, what we just told you is super scary, right? So with looking at a giant river that's gushing with giant waves and saying, you're going to get in that and you're going to do cartwheels and you're going to have fun at it. So Sam, why don't you start there?
Yeah, I like that, to take this idea and apply it, because everybody's done something physical that they look at and they go, oh, that looks risky, and then they go experiencing it, even if it's on a small scale, what looks risky or scary to them. And so you take this idea and you apply it back to business, and you even apply it back to automation. And in your case, Gary, if we were to look at it and you said, hey, this is the idea of taking this much time off without touching my business is terrifying, right? And so we break that down and we go, well, what are the component parts that make up that risk, right? Why can't you take that time off today? And once we break it down and start to understand it, then we can objectively identify the pieces that need to be worked on to allow you to then do the things that you want to do, like taking that time off. This is the same with the physical component of high adventure sports, right? You don't jump in and just do the hardest thing right away. You start with baby steps and you learn and you break down the risk and you start to understand the landscape of risk. What's objective? What's subjective, right? Is it subjective risk? If you actually put your phone down for 6 days, would your business actually have major issues? Or would people just not be able to contact you, but ultimately it would actually be fine? You know what I mean? And so we look at these pieces and we do that in all the components of the systems that we look at for people, because oftentimes some of it is as a lot of it's subjective risk that people have in their minds. Oh, I can't do that, right? I can't automate that. And it's like, well, actually, yes, you can. And then they miss the pieces where they think they could automate. And it's like, no, that's where you need to not automate, right there. And we'll get into those pieces. But the whole idea here is that there's a framework of looking at and assessing risk in high adventure and physical activities that can be applied to business. And the thing that you're trying to do is break it down, understand the risk at the components, and then make changes to improve yourself in a business context to the point where you can fully step away and have an automated business.
So I'll add a framework to that. Everybody's seen an onion, right? An onion grows in layers, small, and there's layers and layers and layers. Most people who are successful in business started out small and they added a layer. of a thing they had to do or deliver or review. And over time, they've added lots of layers. And now they got those big layers, and the most recent and up-to-date layers are on the outside. But what they don't do sometimes is take the time to go back and remove all the unneeded layers that you started with that are duplication. A good example of that is I have people, I ask the question just like an annoying little kid, why do you do that? And you can be like a fly in the wall. That's one of the things that we do, is we observe what people do and why they do it and how they do it. And then as a third party, and I always say that the best person who is the smartest in your organization is the newest one you hire, and you're trying to train them, because then you're trying to train them how to do all the things that you want them to do. And most of them, if they're smart and they're not afraid of giving feedback to their boss or their manager, will ask the question, why do you do this when you do it in 3 different steps and you go straight line? If you just eliminate that and get the same result. And the comment would be well, that's because that's the way we've always done it. And that's what we call a habit. So the comment is change, and looking at these things sometimes means looking at some of the habits, processes that you do. And there are many that if you're past the age of 25, you do things what I call automatics. There are things that you've done them the same way. You don't even think about them. But when you try to explain to somebody, here's what you need to do this job, and you try to do it step by step so they can repeat what you asked them to do and in the exact order and all that, they'll usually come up with probably at least 75% of the time of things that you do going, wow, that's a lot of work. There's an easier way to do that. And that may be because they know about a tool, they're thinking about the process, or they just realize, that's your habit, but I can do it faster, and, go do something else and be more productive for you as a team member.
So when you kind of start developing this, is that kind of where you start breaking it down as what are your habits, or are there certain areas that you focus on first? Or as you start this, where does somebody focus their attention to begin this process?
Yeah, so I'll jump in on that one. Is we start with something really simple and not digital, surprisingly. We have people print out a piece of paper that's got some lines on it like a spreadsheet. And we call it a PAL, or a personal activity log is what the acronym is for. And it's simply having everyone on your team who's involved with the different aspects of your business write down what they do for 2 or 3 days, just all the different things they do. And
every
that's where
15-minute increment.
Yeah, everything you do. And sometimes that has to be a few more days. Sometimes it's faster than that, depending on what people do. But the idea is that you start to understand what you actually do that makes up running a business, right? What are all the little things that in the context of taking time off that you, quote unquote, maybe don't feel like you can take the time away from, right? And so now that you understand what those are, that's the starting point.
What sucks up your time?
Exactly. What is the busy work of business? What is the busy work of business? What actually takes up your time? And then we take that, and I'm going to layer this in because it's the next thing that we do for people to think about and start putting in their minds. And this is something people can do themselves. You write this stuff down. And then the next thing you do is you look at it in the context of 5 different areas of your business. Attracting, what do you do to attract new business, right? That's usually the least automatable, the very top part of that. That's the raw marketing, the creative work that's going out a lot of the times. Now that you've got that interest, how do you convert it into leads and then sales? And those two, that's where automation really can start to kick in. And then you've made a promise to people and they've bought something. Now you've got to fulfill it. Obviously, if you don't fulfill your promises, you're pretty quick out of business. And then after that is where most businesses stop, but there's 2 more crucial ones, and that's really good businesses make a point to have processes and automation that delight their customers, that help them get more utilization out of their product or service, and also are opportunities to upsell them to new and different aspects of the product and service that give them more benefit. And then the final one, and the cheapest marketing anybody can do, if they have a good product or service that people love, is making sure that they identify their process for referrals. So you have attract, convert, fulfill, delight, and refer. And if you look at this different things that you do in those stages of your business, now you have a pretty clear picture of all the things that go into running your business. And that's, and only then is where you start looking at, of the processes, what can and should be automated.
And those processes are the same, and regardless of what kind of business you're in. So when you drill down into those processes, what you actually do, that's when we get to the detail of, okay, what are you doing today? What's supposed to happen? And then, the idea being is, okay, and everybody's seen this. Think of a series of pipes, right? Big diameter, small diameter. If you have a lot of water pressure and you have too small a pipe, many leads, not enough way to follow up on them, the pipe bursts, and guess what? You're not following up on business that you've invested to build. If you're trying to build pressure, then you need to make sure that your pipes are about the same size. Otherwise, we've all experienced, and you go to the shower on the third floor of the house, and it dribbles out of the shower. Well, if you make the pipes the right size so that the pressure is going through them consistently, the pipes either don't leak and you get consistent flow of leads, business, money, cash, no matter where that end is. A good example of what I'm talking about, I told you I'll give you some example. One of our customers, she is super successful. And it takes her 30 minutes to take your money after you've said yes. And I went, that's nuts. You have somebody on the phone. You should be able to ask for their credit card, take it, and then all the things that happen, all the things that they are enrolled in, all the information they get, all the process they get started on, you should just say, put on this campaign, and bam, it all happens. And in one of those situations, that 30 minutes was down to a checkbox. And guess what?
And I think the other important thing there, Josh, is the volume of how many she's doing.
Right, exactly. So here's the real key is the fact that she had to spend 30 minutes really wasn't a big deal to make $3,000 or $4,000, right? The difference is she was having to do that 30 times a day.
What?
Yeah, 30 times a day she was having to do all this stuff. So I took 30 times 30 minutes. So between her and her staff doing this stuff just to get the customers on board, we reduced the whole process down to one click, okay? After they take the credit card. Enroll, right? And then all those things happen. There were literally like 22 different things that go on, right? To get them involved in this course or that campaign or recurring meetings, all the things that they needed to set up and manually do now happen with a click. What is her comment? There's an interesting comment that came from her. She called me about 3 Thursdays ago, early in the morning, and said, "You're going to laugh your butt off, Josh." And I said, "What?" She said, I think I have PTSD of automation. I said, "What the heck are you talking about?" She said, "I signed up a customer." This was early on in the first 3 or 4 days that we put this place. I said, "I just signed up a new customer." And I started checking all the places that I normally need to go, and they were already done. She said, I was reaching for an arm that no longer was there that I needed to deal with. So it was like, oh, and then, realistically, another like 10 days ago, she called me and says, there was a problem with one of the processes. Okay. She changed the way she did things, and one thing didn't fire. He says, "You know what? I forgot that I actually had to do all this stuff. I'm so busy doing all new marketing that, I didn't realize how much stuff is being done." In other words, how quick she forgot how she used to have to do it. It was like, boom, it's all gone. And her next comment was, what else can we do? You know?
And the thing was, she's at a decision point at this point in her business. I'm going to jump in, Josh, because like, this is what a lot of the customers that we work with experience is they're at a decision point of, I could hire somebody to do those 30-minute tasks per each customer and it would still be profitable, but now I have to hire and pay someone on an ongoing basis to do this type of work, or press one of my other team members to take on more work from an area that they're not necessarily hired to focus on. And I have to continually pay that person to do this ongoing task that is process driven, standardized, the same every time. Or I can invest once in automation and it works always and forever. And that automation also does not need a health insurance plan. It does not take a vacation, right? And it's also work that people often don't want to do, and they just get tasked with in addition to what they're really there to do. And it's that idea of pipes, and Josh talked about this. It's the other part of that analogy, which is it's people, we poured water down the pipe. It's about to get to the end. Make sure that somebody picks that pipe up and connects it to the other one so that the water flows through, versus building a connector so that anytime you put water into the pipe, it goes through and you're not leaking water. And you don't have to hire somebody to move the pipe each time, aka move the data.
The name of your podcast is Pipeology, so it's kind of a fitting
pipelineology.
But it's kind of a fitting thing that you don't want leaky pipes, you don't want improperly sized pipes. You know, you want it to flow. And there's an interesting thing if you have a business that has multiple people who tasks or processes need to be handed off to. You know, you sold somebody, marketing hands it off to sales hands it off to production or implementation or, you know, shipping, whatever that might be, right? So this is the thing that really keeps us busy. When we start with a customer, we start with where the leakiest pipe is, right? Kind of let's fix that immediate problem, get that out of the way, remove the bucket that's dripping, so to speak, or, you know, is about to implode. But we can always tell if we've drawn out this whole kind of 10,000 foot level, that if we improve this thing right here and we increase the pressure, we know who's down, the poor person who's downline from that, who is now going to have to deal with it. And we also know that once that thing pressurizes and it's full and it's working great, there's somebody at the other downstream that's going, I got too much to do. So we know where our next focus will literally need to be, because we're going to see that section of the piping, all right, and the plumbing, so to speak, start to experience some issues. All right. Not always. Some people have some really good, solid, you know, existing piping. But when you go in and do a remodel of a house, a business, you know, you replace something with better technology, faster, easier, smoother, you know, larger flow. There's bound to be something downstream that's going to burst, break, or stop. You know, it's plumbing, you know, and as I jokingly say sometimes, you know, you have an expectation when you press the lever that everything flushes. You know, it should just go smoothly from that perspective. But, you know, the interesting thing, I'm sure that everybody's saying, well, that must be expensive. You know, it takes a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy. To make things simple, it does take energy and time. Okay. But in most of our customers, we might be, and I'm accused of, hey, you're going to come in and replace my employees. And I'm like, no, I'm going to release them from the boredom, okay? And if they've been with you for a while, and they know the quality of what you're working, what you're doing, we're going to allow them to work with the people that they develop relationships or help them talk to people who need help, where a computer can't answer a complex question or hey, could you tell me why this would work for me? Computer's not going to do that, you know, if that's not in your business. But the idea here is that we take people and put them in the human part of where it's important. Or people say, I talked to Andrew and man, your team is awesome. He helped me solve this problem and showed me exactly how to use this properly or how to do this properly. But the answer from an investment standpoint we find that most of our customers who have people they pay between $30,000 and $50,000 a year with all the overheads and benefits, that over a 5-year period, that's $300,000 to $500,000, and you can replace a lot of stuff for less than 1 year's worth of salary. And that's a good investment because you never have to pay that again. It's totally diverted. So there's a huge, I won't say there's 100 to 1 investment. Anybody who has 100 to 1 investment will buy that every day. But if you can get a return of 10 or 15% over multiple years from investing in something, most people can't get that on a day-to-day basis, not even in the bank. So that's kind of where we look at is, okay, are you willing to invest? Do you have more business than you can handle? Okay. If you can't generate business, one thing that we don't do, we know how to market. We just don't do it for others. When I say marketing, advertising. Why? Because if you're spending money on advertising, you got to have somebody who's specifically watching and managing your pocketbook. Otherwise, it'll go out the window like doves, in a hurry. But once that advertising comes in, and tracking it, and if you're doing retargeting and you automate that so that those who are already customers don't get retargeted, you're not spending money on somebody who's already a customer. That we do. So we'll help control the valves of spending. But the initial, hey, we need to create a Facebook ad and do something for the holidays. Right? No different than that was my morning job this morning. I had to create a 90-second promotion for something that we're doing, as simple as automating handwritten letters in volume. I'm giving away just, if one of your people hear this on Thursday, if you don't want to write a handwritten letter to any of your clients or family, I'm giving away 100 letters, right? Will be automatically handwritten. I'll even give you the sappy words for it. Okay. That'll go out with the press of a button. That way you can say thank you. You can say happy anniversary. Well, we're just doing it to say, when was the last time you wrote handwritten letters to your clients to say Happy New Year? And this year, particularly, we all need it.
So you're automating handwritten letters. I got to hear this. I got to hear this. How do you do that?
Let's dive into this. Josh, hold on. Back up because you just jumped right in and there's a little bit of a context piece missing here.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
It needs to be layered in. This idea of being human where it counts and otherwise automating, right? What does it mean to be human, right? It's the personal touches. It's the things that we all believe or commonly recognize that if somebody puts thought and energy into my problem or the experience that I'm having with the company, that usually feels pretty good and makes a pretty strong connection and also makes me very likely to refer you business.
And be loyal.
So we look at that and we go, well, what can you do? And how much of it can you automate while still retaining the personal feel? So that is where this is one, I'll call it tool in the toolbox of being human where it counts, otherwise automating, where we can tie someone's automation system into a service that automatically at the right stage in the customer journey sends out a handwritten thank you note. It literally looks handwritten. I have one here.
And it's got a stamp and the envelope's postmarked.
Yeah, it comes like this. I have one in my desk because we did a webinar about these recently. And it looks like that. And then the card itself can have, this was an example, but it can have anything you want on the front. And then this is the level, this is what it looks like. I mean, if I showed you this, does this look handwritten to you?
Well, it definitely does. And if you're just listening to the audio feed of it, basically what Sam is showing is it looks very much like a letter with a logo on the front. And as I'm looking at the text of this, boy, I can't tell the difference over a video feed.
So-
if that's not real handwriting.
So Gary,
Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story. Okay. I'm preparing some cards for our customers and family for New Year's, right? And I sent the test one I wrote the copy and I sent the test one to myself. I don't have it. My wife threw it out, but she opened it up and I was in the kitchen. She says, "Oh, you got a letter from somebody," because it was a thank you note from somebody. And she's reading it, says, "Dear Josh." And, it says, "They wrote a really nice handwritten letter." He said, "But it's from you." Because it was, from Josh. I said, "What? I don't understand." And I said, "Yeah, it's a handwritten letter that I ordered with a click of a button, and it merged in anything that I wanted from my CRM system to personally say thank you about the product and service they bought and how wonderful I appreciate their business and I look forward to it. And by the way, if you want to refer a friend, here's a code for them for a discount." So, the handwritten, and we're all stuck at home these days. We go to the mailbox, and guess what? Here's a simple concept. Everybody on this podcast, including you, Gary, have bought something online from someone a bunch of times this year, okay? And you get this email that says, "Thank you for your order."
Which is great, better than nothing.
Or "Here's your invoice paid," right? Just imagine it. We have people who do this. Every time somebody buys something that they're shipping, what do you have? Your address, their name. We can automatically send them a thank you card that says, "Thank you for buying our product. We really appreciate it. Signed, Josh and Sam." It's just one thing you go, wow. It sets
And
you
you can
apart.
take it a step further. That's pretty much fully automated. You can take it a step further and add even a more human element in it, where you write a note that then merges in to the rest of the letter in context automatically. And you would get a task out of your system that assigns you time to write the note at the time the purchase took place, so that you did it on time, all the time, for every customer, and you had a consistent experience. And then I'm going to take this a step further. You can then, what we help you do is in this context, this example, track, okay, you're going to send handwritten thank you notes. Let's try at least 2 different styles, because what's your goal with these? It's to say thank you and mean it and do it in a way that looks fully human. And the other aspect of it is to help you get more sales, right? You're doing it, 1, because it's a nice thing to do, but 2, because you're hoping that it'll return in more repeat sales or referrals. And so using physical mail, we're able to help people track if it is actually converting to more sales by split testing physical letters that are going out automatically from your system. Like, that's where you take it to the level of automation and tracking and looking at using that human touch to make the difference.
And then if you really want to get fancy, so let's talk about.
We're like running down this example, but
one after another. But we have one of the services that we use that if you want to send a gift card from Home Depot, from Starbucks, from Lowe's, from Costco, any of those type of gift cards, it will automatically put a personalized gift card inside that note that you personally sent. Now, isn't that freaking cool? And you don't have to whip out your credit card. Hi, thanks for your help. Buy yourself a cup of coffee. Here's a $5 Starbucks card. You're getting a handwritten note with a gift thing. Let me put a little context to this. For 40 years that I've been in business, when everybody spent any customer that spends $5,000 with them, I send them a pound of the most expensive chocolate toffee there is in the world. It costs more than prime rib, and it's $20 a pound. Okay, so I send a thank you box. I've always sent a thank you box of chocolate. Well, our system knows when you spend $5,000, if amount over $5,000, send email to chocolate manufacturer to send out box with thank you note, and it just goes to them. So we've always used ways. I mean, my assistant used to do that. Now the system does it, and it does it every time. And I don't care if it's the same customer. I remember one of the customers said to me, Josh, I love this toffee. I just should, instead of eating it, I should just slap it on my thighs. You can't stop eating it. So the idea here is, if you're going to do something consistently, right? And all of us are good entrepreneurs. We get busy, we get distracted. And I'll use the combination, in the days of yore, when you went to trade shows and you picked up cards and you told everybody, hey, give me your card, I'll send you some stuff. And then, the card sits in a bundle of rubber bands in your left-hand corner drawer, two drawers down. You pull it out 3 weeks later and you go, I'm embarrassed to send it because now I'm like a month later I met you, so you never do anything with it. The idea here is timeliness, all right? People these days, if you don't respond to somebody in a short order, usually, especially if it's an online relationship at the beginning, they're off to somebody else. So, what sets you apart? Getting something personal, getting some kind of response, getting in their inbox, or in this case, getting in their mailbox. Everybody's home today, everybody I just look at it this way. When you get a package from Amazon, they let you know, and you can't wait to get out to the mailbox or go get that thing. A letter is the same thing. It's a nice surprise. Anyway, let's kind of keep moving along the automation thing. We just kind of described one little piece of being human, but automating some of that thing so it's helpful to you and being personalized.
I like the example though. I thought it's kind of a fascinating use of taking a human touch still, just making sure it stays consistent. And I love that idea that you actually get the human benefit out of it while reducing the amount of time spent trying to do it. Because I think that's always the balancing part, right?
If you'd like me to describe kind of an automation process, which, since you said that the audience out there, your consultants, your business people, your agencies, you probably do things like talking to somebody on the phone, making a proposal, taking, a deposit, maybe signing a contract, right? And having to get that done, and then starting them through either an implementation process or a weekly or, a scheduled weekly or scheduled recurring call to work them through a coaching scenario. Okay. Let's talk about some real life stuff. Okay. So, I'm going to use this one. I had a woman come to me, and not a woman, and she says, things are going great. I just don't have any more time. Can you fix this? And I'm like, what? She says, I want more time back. I want my life back. I've been working on it. So I said, let's go through this process. And we spent 4 hours together just kind of sketching it out. I mean, I asked her to bring to the table when we schedule this, a drawing. Okay. Can you just kind of draw out a little bit about your process? And when she sent me the picture, and your viewers can't see this, but it looked like a football play, with, lines all over the place. And she says, that's my process. And I went, okay, will you explain that to me? Because I was like, is this a flea flicker or what? I couldn't tell, because she had layered on every single one of the arrows and X's and boxes and where it goes. And I saw the final result. I was like, okay. So I said, yeah, looks like you got a lot going on. So let's talk about that. So as she unpacked what she did step by step, I made it into little swim lanes. Okay, this is the process. Then you do this, then you do this, then it goes to the next lane, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. And she looked at it and went, yeah, that's exactly what I do. Those are all the steps that I do. And we counted them, and there were like 95 steps to do something. And said, okay, let's start at the top and let's start working through what you actually do. In other words, here's the steps. I sent them a contract. Okay, that means you got to prepare one, fill one out, do. Now, all of us know about little pieces of automation, like, a sign request or a DocuSign or something like that. But I said, okay, my idea is let's eliminate it. Let's let you just check off a box, or once they pay, it just kind of happens. So the first thing we started with is, okay, she doesn't sell online. She literally has an appointment and she sells, and then they do this consulting. So the first thing that we had to do was, she was getting leads, approximately 30 to 40 leads that came in through a webinar, a automated webinar. So she did Facebook to webinar, getting leads and going to an appointment. She'd have these appointments every day. They'd fill out a form to make the appointment, and then she would have a second page that they would ask about 10 or 15 questions to not qualify them, but have a better discussion. They already knew what they were getting into, but she wanted to know some details. So every day she was having to copy and paste those 20 or 30 questions into her CRM. Okay. So she got an email from a Calendly, so she had some automation, Facebook to a webinar, to a Calendly appointment, to a page that took the questions. Then she had to copy the questions into her CRM system. And then she had to make the call and then, start getting answers, more details as she called. She took notes. And then once the person, so I eliminated all that. Now it goes from the seminar, from the Facebook to the auto webinar, to the call, to the questions. It's already in her database, and she gets an email with a link with the appointment set on her calendar automatically. She doesn't have to set the appointment anymore, with the link to the database record. So when she goes in there and has the call, she just presses the link and up goes her screen. Now she just types in the notes. Amazing. That alone was, a time saver of copy and paste. And she has literally said, I don't even remember doing that anymore. It's just a breath of fresh air. I said, okay, what's the next step? It says, when they say yes. So we took the approach of, let's talk about how we make more money first rather than save time. Okay, what do you got to do? Well, I take their money. I said, how do you do that? I said, I go into QuickBooks and I type in all their name and address and everything again, and I take their card and I charge it. And then they get a receipt, and then I put their name into the CRM system and make sure that I, and then add them to this, that, and the other. And I send, and then I go into a e-document, and then I send them a contract that before they actually get enabled in all our systems, we have to have a contract signed. So I send them this contract. I use an electronic signature. I have to refill in all the information and then send the contract and wait for them to get back, or put it on my calendar to remind me that whether they've gotten it back to me or not. And I was like, okay, let's just take care of that. Now I'm talking after, this is a long discussion, but the answer is okay. So now let's go into your CRM system and ask them for their credit card. And now it's attached to the record. They get a receipt. It's all automatic. Bam. Okay. And you get it. And you know what it's when it's successful, because I'll send you a text that says, cha-ching, you have money. All right. So, and I'll also send you money if their credit card, send you a cha-ching if it failed. So while you're on the phone with them, you'll know right away if it processed, then, that was just a good warm feeling. So the second part was, okay, so now you've taken their money and you're going to tell them on the phone that you're going to send them a contract to sign. And you filled in all the fields that you need to, and you just checked off send contract. That's up. Boom. And now the contract in her case, the contract validates all the fields that, she had like 12 or 15 fields. So there's a lot of information that sometimes she forgot. So I made sure that it all got validated. It was all filled in before you send the blank contract or missing stuff to a customer. And then what would happen was, after that validation said, yep, it's ready to send, it actually sends it if it's all filled in, or if it didn't, it'll text you and say, you missed something. But in the meantime, it will send her the initial contract right away. Like within seconds in her email. And she can just review it, make sure everything's spot on and she wasn't working too fast, didn't make spelling errors. We all do that. I'm a big culprit of, I'm a two-finger typist, so I can spell. I'm always misspelling. So, she got to review the contract, and then she just clicks, I approve, and it automatically gets forwarded to the customer. The customer gets it within seconds, right? So we're talking about a minute and a half while you're on the phone just talking to somebody. The customer's now got the contract. They can sign it. It automatically gets, the customer gets the e-signature. It automatically, the contract gets stuffed into the CRM system. So she doesn't have to look in yet another system. She has to reference it. And it says when they completed it and what date. And if they've done multiple contracts, she can see the history of them and click on it and review them. Okay. Whoa, no two systems. All of it's all in one bucket. Then once that's done and the contract is signed, that automatically kicks off the rest of the enrollment process. So that kind of give you an idea how this evolved. The first thing was that they had to get put into their learning management system. their project management system, alert who's the coach who's assigned to them, send a thank you email to everybody, distribute all their emails and passwords and access to the systems, and then put them on their weekly coaching call that repeats every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Okay? Now that's done all within 30 seconds just by putting him on the enroll campaign. It's done. Okay? Now, because she has a 10-week program that she runs through, and she does this individually or by groups, mainly by groups. She has a cohort of 10 or 15 people that come to the training with one trainer. The trainers used to have to send out the Monday, Wednesday, Friday reminders. Hey, don't forget to come, blah, 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 blah. So now they automatically get reminded. Their people don't have to do that anymore. Their people don't have to look up information. It's already set up. Hey, you have a new customer, get in touch with them. And we even did it with their employees where the system sends out an invite, the first invite for the introduction call to the coach that they're assigned to. So they paid the money, they set up in the system. The last one was, hi, this is Trisha, and I'm going to be your coach. And here's my Calendly so you can make a link and we can book our first call as an introduction. So all the things that she had to rely on her team, who are super busy, the consistency of just the front end of getting people into the system improved by almost 40%, no errors. It always happens. Now, automation does occasionally fall apart. So what we do is when everything works, we send
hold on.
email. Yeah, go ahead.
Why does automation fall apart? Because it doesn't fall apart just randomly. So
because
I think that's very important to address, because you're going to throw that out there and people go, well, why would I invest in automation if it occasionally falls apart?
Okay. You want to take that? Or should I?
Right, you can run with it. You can run with it.
So
I'll try
automation fall apart, right? One is the person who's designing the workflow forgot a step. Or a customer changes their process and forgot to tell you to make a change, okay? Or let's be realistic. Sometimes the internet goes out. There are outages and one system doesn't talk to another, okay? And some systems that only send the request over but never confirm they got it. It's like a telephone call. You called me, but you never left a message, so I don't know you called. So the idea here is on certain types of processes, what we do is we close the loop, especially if they're complex. And when you get really comfortable and you say, oh, it's all working and I don't have to do it anymore, one of the last steps in this particular process is we send a confirmation email that says everything's been done. If something didn't work for some reason, here's exactly where the problem was. So you can go in, and if you have to actually, if 1 in 100 times, maybe the internet was out, or one of your we had this case the other day, Trello, right? AWS went out. There was a Zapier. I'm getting into the weeds here, and I apologize. But, the signal went out in Trello. Trello wasn't available. It wasn't set up at that time to retry. Hey, I didn't get a response. It waited 30 minutes. The outage was like for 2 hours. And, eventually my system sent a note and said, couldn't reach Trello. Could they go back in there and just fire off that initial one redone? Yeah, because they were all built in components. So we just chained them all together. But hey, this one's missing. Just restart. Just send that one again. Boom, it's done. It's not the end of the world. But we did close the loop and say, hey, guess what? This piece didn't happen. Check on it. All right.
And that brings up another important point, is that when you make automation, you should document what you're doing so that you have documentation of what you've automated. It's because we see this occasionally. We put automation in place for people. It's beautiful. They love it. And then they get all these new ideas, which is great. And then they go at it because they've learned a couple things about their system. And then they cause what I call an automation avalanche. Because they didn't check their documentation, look at it, understand what they had in place, and that using similar triggers or tags or things in the systems could also accidentally fire off some other stuff. So one thing, word of the wise, when you build automation, document it, train people on what it is, and say, you're welcome to create beautiful new processes and try new things. just check the documentation first so you don't cause what I call an automation avalanche.
And I'll give you a story which is interesting. I have customers who have been my customers for 30 years. Larger companies, those, Fortune 1000. It's interesting because over the years, people turn over. IT directors, automation people, just staff turns over. Whether they get promoted or given the opportunity to work somewhere else successfully, AKA fired or leave.
Well, and people move on, right?
Right.
People move on.
But here's what usually happens because of the way that I've done this, and most big firms do this, most small firms don't. We have an automation map, there's a documentation of all this stuff. And so I'll get a call from whoever's in charge at the moment and say, you guys and your team built this. We need to make some changes. And I say, let's whip out the map and look at how it works today. What part are you going to change and where? And that way I know if we make the change, what is the downstream? We talked about this pipe, the whole piping thing. What happens if we change this water? Oh, you didn't put an outlet. It's going to fill up your basement. Oops. And so when we do this with small to mid-sized business or agencies, we actually have a map that you should follow. And when you're going to make a change, look at your map. It's going to tell you how your plumbing's put together. And if you divert it over here, then it breaks. I'll give you a very simple example, which is kind of interesting. One of our customers who we took on 2 years ago, has 250,000 customers. They do some really wild stuff. Totally online consulting and business. And they also wrote a best-selling book, but that's a different story. We were reviewing their processes. They used 96 pieces of online software to run their business.
You can name because people can go experience this. It's called
Mastering Diabetes. They actually talk about us on some of our videos. We'll put some links down below. You can look at that. But one of the things that we did is they went from 96 pieces. We documented how many different internet things they use, because there's a cost and a learning curve and an integration. When we were done, they were down to about 30 some odd. Okay. So there was a lot of things we streamlined. Okay. Just from a, how does this work perspective? And utilize as much of any tool that we put in place. The second part, which I thought was funny, when we did this automation audit, that, as I talked about peeling back the layers of the onion thingy that I mentioned earlier on, Cyrus was telling me about this amazing tool they were using that is generating 300 to 500 new leads every month. And it was really inexpensive. It was like $20 a month. And however it worked, it was magical. And I said, holy crap, I need to see, you got my interest up there. What is it? So he showed it to me and I said, I want to see these reports. They got reports to show you how many leads you got. So we went back in the current month and there was nothing. We went back another month and there was nothing. Another month. It happened to be March when we started. So what happened was we went back to December. I said, oh yeah, you got 488, almost 500 leads. She says, yeah. We get about a 30% conversion, and each one of those conversions are worth $3,000 to $5,000 or some it wasn't $39. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I was like, that's a money machine. Why did it stop? Because I don't know. I said, let's make sure it's plugged in. That's number one. Check your credit card. It's a paid service. I said, it was working. We looked back a couple of months like a charm, and now it was not working. Check your credit card. Guess what? Credit card expired.
Oops.
You talk about 1,500 leads, a 30% conversion, 500 sales times $3,000. You can do the math. That's a lot of money. That was a lot more money than any of our charges to do the work we were doing for an entire year. Okay? We found one thing because of our audit, and he flipped it on and things started working. But I look at it this way. That is a failure of the vendor who does not tell you your credit card's expiring. They didn't get the revenue, and they didn't get the referrals and the happy customers. So, some techie guy, and you techies out there, don't take offense. I'm a techie at heart too, but built something that all of a sudden, the credit card stopped working. You don't get revenue. The customer doesn't get satisfaction. And what do? It broke, or they leave and they go somewhere else, or they forget about it. And we're on this internet online world thing. And if you don't have a way to know when something of your 90 some odd tools stops working, that could be important, especially if, there's supposed to be a handoff from one to the other. And so, that's one of the first things that we do is, along with the PAL thing and our mapping, our customer journey mapping of how you work is, what's your audit? What are you using? What does it do for you? And, is there a better way to do this? In some cases, is there a less expensive way to do it? Does this tool integrate with anything else? So it's kind of a holistic approach, like bringing your car to the mechanic and saying, it occasionally doesn't start. And you say, what? The first thing is, what's wrong with it? Nope. You know how to diagnose it? Well, it'll take a little time. It'll ask you questions. When does it happen? Only when it's cold or when it's too hot? Does it happen every week or every day? And then, you've got to diagnose why the car doesn't start. And Gary, I don't know about you, but I've brought my car in for service many times of the many cars, too many that I've owned. And every time I bring it in for the thing I have a problem with, they say, while we were under there, we noticed, your ball bearings are leaking, your alignment's out, your tires are bad, your transmission's leaking. And, while they're in there, you have a choice. Fix it or, decide when it might, how long will that last me? Because I got to wait till the next, check or, I'm getting rid of the car. I don't really care. So those are the types of things, just like when you bring a car in or any type of thing in for service or an audit, so to speak. It's helpful when somebody says, did you know that this is here? You want us to talk about we can fix that problem, process, error, then it's a conversation. We're not usually operating as a break fix company. I've had a philosophy for many years, and people laugh at me for it. It says we don't provide any service because our stuff never breaks. Okay, in other words, I don't want a phone. I've always had a bonus system in place for all of our team members. If you deliver stuff to a customer and my phone rings because it broke or it's not working, because that's whose phone is going to ring, mine or Sam's, the point people, then you're not going to get a bonus. It's really simple because we give a project bonus for everybody, a significant one. So the idea here is take the time to do it right, figure out where it might break, make sure you test the darn stuff, okay? Put some pressure in the pipes, all right? Occasionally some things will leak and you make an adjustment, but do it before you hand it over to the customer and they come back and say, it's leaking. And then we have to make a service call and then we got it. And you know what? It never happens at a good time. And Gary, I'm sure that, you have business and all you folks out there who are coaches, consultants from agencies that provide a service that you do something. When a customer calls and it's Friday night or Saturday afternoon or Sunday while you're in church or whatever that may be, do you ignore the call? Or do you interrupt everything you're doing going, what happened, right? They're usually not calling you to tell you they made $1 million. That's not usually a call. It's like, it stopped. It's not working. An error occurred, or I can't get in the system. So one of the things that if you take the time to test right and you take the time to train your customer how to use whatever systems they are and get them used to it, guess what? I can say this. When Sam was younger and learning to drive, I gave him the keys to my new Mini manual. And I had trained him how to use a stick shift. And I don't remember, it was the first day or whatever day it was, I got a call. Oops, I had a little accident. And then I wondered why one day, and this is a whole nother story, we won't go down that route. I wondered why that my Mini that only had like 4,000 miles on it needed a new clutch that should have lasted 25,000 miles. Oh boy, that was some fun stories. But people do things with your services and the products that you provide them that you didn't intend to, and then you have unplanned consequences that you have to deal with. So that's part of looking at automation, is thinking through the whole thing and not doing and we have a video out there on our website. It's called "Don't Be a Cowboy." Oh, I want to do something, and you just kind of jump on your horse and ride into the sunset. It doesn't work that way. Gary, what else can we help you with here for your?
Well,
for your
I could sit here and talk about this stuff all day with you guys. I find this stuff just absolutely fascinating. But I'm sure other people have places to be, and this is probably a good place to kind of wrap it up. So if somebody does want to explore this further and kind of start getting more in the weeds with it and really get into it, where should we point them, or where should we direct them so they can kind of get into your world?
So what we did, Sam made this, and it'll be ready for you by the time this show goes up. mobilepocketoffice.com/.
Pipelineology.
Pipelineology. Why don't you spell the whole thing out for everybody?
MobilePocketOffice.com. So mobilepocketoffice.com/pipelineology. PIPELINEOLOGY. Just the name of Gary's podcast here, Pipelineology. mobilepocketoffice.com/pipelineology. That will put some resources on there that people can go and get for free to get themselves started with understanding how they can be human where it counts and otherwise automating, because you got to start there. You don't start with automation, as we've discussed here. You start with understanding your process, and then you figure out what you should automate first. So we'll put that up there for free, and we're excited to do that. And then the other thing is, if people want to just get in touch with us, mobilepocketoffice.com. Tell us if you feel otherwise. We feel like we've done a good job of a big old button on the front that says book now. So if you want to talk to us and have a conversation, we'd be happy to chat with you. But make sure you carve out some time, because we're long-winded. So,
well, gentlemen, thanks so much for coming on today. I really appreciate you doing this, and I really appreciate kind of sharing these insights into automation for everybody. Any parting words before we jump off here?
Figure out how to take time off from your business through automation, because you live once and then you die. So make sure that you're not just doing business stuff.
Anybody who is an entrepreneur that's listening to this program, if you go back to why you wanted to be an entrepreneur, so you can run your own life and do what you want, when you want it, take time off, enjoy things. If that ain't what you're getting, the myth of being an entrepreneur means you built a business that you can never leave. That's not being an entrepreneur. Yeah. So, some of the best books that I've read are, you build a business that doesn't need you. And if that's the case, you can also then sell it when you're ready to stop, and somebody else will then take over. So too many of the people that I've seen don't understand what I call the entrepreneurial time system. And here's a parting thought on that. This is actually a real thing. Every day you take off and don't get interrupted, don't answer the phone, do anything else, you get 2 days of whammo power. Okay. So if you want to be super productive, take, and everybody knows this innately, you've done it before in your past. You take a couple of days off, you come back supercharged, ready to go. But the idea is uninterrupted time. So, because the longer you go before taking a break, your productivity, your creativity, it starts to go down, it dwindle, where you're fighting yourself every day. And, think about it. If you get sick and you can't answer the phone and you're off for 3 to 7 days because you got, you're hopefully not, the current flu and all that stuff, but you're just not feeling good, watch, just taking time off. And then when you come back, you're refreshed and you literally get a jolt in energy. And that's the idea of an entrepreneurial time system. We can talk more about that another time.
Know yourself out of a job.
That's right. Find your way to take 166 days a year off and not be afraid of it.
That's awesome. Well, Sam, Josh, thanks so much for sharing today. I really appreciate having you on the show. And yeah, we'll make sure we share all these resources in the show notes, and we'll have to have you on again sometime. But until then, take care, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Pipelineology podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and look forward to seeing you on the next one. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.